had a membership program for quite some time, but when we opened Shanghai, a lot of people said, yeah, but you understand, membership in China, that's never going to happen. And it's wonderfully successful. People have embraced us, and within the first year, we have something like 1,300 members. Touch and feel. You have to be there. You have to walk into that building, and you have to stand there and say, okay, this works. We really need to think about the fact that we're competing for people's free time.
Fantastic. A very warm welcome to our Made in China podcast. Today it's a very special guest that we've also been looking forward to for a very long time. Yoram Roth with me today. You are currently sitting where exactly?
I'm in Berlin.
You're in Berlin. Fantastic. And I'm in Shanghai. We both have probably a very good weather. Let's dive into our 3 quick questions. If you had 1 month of free time and unlimited money to pursue a hobby, which one would it be?
I don't know that a month is long enough to do anything I want, but I think I would just probably go to Florence and look at Renaissance art.
Great. That sounds good. And what is your favorite place in your city and why?
Oh my God, is it okay to say Klärchens Ballhaus? Can I pitch my own things? I mean, I love Berlin, but I mean, I have so many wonderful things in Berlin that I'm involved with, that I own, that I'm very proud of. At Klärchens Ballhaus, obviously, is one. I love going to the Holzmarkt and to Kata. I still like to go to a club at night. I still like to eat well. I still like to be around fun people.
Lovely. And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Trust your instinct, but do it all yourself. You don't need partners. You need to do the work. Ultimately, you know what you want. Go do it. And you're going to have to do it all yourself anyway. So go do the work.
That's a good advice. Yeah, sometimes I also think that.
Well, I think there's this thing where we like try and like work with partners, or you want this sparring partner, you want like you're afraid to do it yourself, and you want somebody to talk it out with, and so you think like you need partners for everything, but ultimately, honestly, sometimes the business isn't big enough for partners. Like there's just not enough money left over. So you just need to go do it yourself. And then ultimately, if you know what you want, trust yourself and learn to articulate what you want so that you actually get what you want, hoping that people will read and learn or maybe understand what you're trying to say. They can't read your mind. Articulate what you want. Stop worrying about pissing people off. You're going to piss people off anyway, or you're going to hurt their feelings, or they're going to hear what they want to hear. So you're never going to get it perfect. So just say what you want and do that.
Love it. Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to have you here, Yoram. And maybe for everyone who doesn't know you yet, could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Happy to. Hi, my name is Yoram Roth. I am speaking in English, obviously, although I'm born and raised in Berlin. Short hello, ich bin gebürtiger Berliner und komme aus Berlin, but I was born during the wall times, and so I grew up in the American sector, and my parents sent me to the American school. And so I learned English as a 4-year-old, and at that point they just said, you know what, get the accent, and then afterwards you can add vocabulary. And that has made my life very interesting. So I've had a chance to live all over the world. My parents have always been in Berlin. I've always felt as a Berliner living elsewhere, but I've lived in New York for many years. I lived in Los Angeles for many years. And I've lived in London, and I've always enjoyed this very international aspect of my life, and which is why I've always sought to take companies that take me to a lot of different cities.
Fantastic. And now I myself, I'm also a big fan of what you have built now. It's called Fotografiska, which is much more than just a museum, right? So I myself, I'm also a member here in Shanghai. I go frequently, so with a lot of pleasure. And it's a very comprehensive cultural experience. I've also been in the one in Berlin. I haven't made it to the other ones yet. But could you describe that? Like, how can our audience imagine the concept and design behind Fotografiska? And how did you come to do that?
There's a long answer and then there's a longer answer, but I'll start with describing Fotografiska. So at its core, we are the contemporary museum of photography, art, and culture. So as the name implies, Fotografiska is a Swedish word. It's an adverb and it means photographic, of a photographic nature. And we started off as a photography museum. We are still very much a museum that begins and thinks about everything from an aspect of image making. We do show a number of artists that start at the image, but then work beyond that, whether that is time-based art, lens-based art, prompt-based art, whether it's digital, video components, and sculptural as well. We've been up for 15 years. This is our 15th anniversary. We started in Stockholm. We opened the doors in Stockholm in 2010, thinking obviously started long before that. I'm not the founder. I founded the international part of it. The two brothers who started it left the company several years ago. I invested in 2016. I took over most of it. I took it to New York and then Berlin and ultimately also Shanghai. And I own all of Fotografiska now. And we do have license partners in Tallinn and in Oslo and a lot of other cities that we're going to announce in the future. Look, how do I describe Fotografiska? At its core, we are a museum. And what does that mean? That means that there's really incredible, smart art on the wall and you can't buy any of it. So that's pretty much the shorthand on it. I think what we've done is, because we are an independent organization, and that means we get no government funding, we get, none of that kind of typical support. It requires a certain entrepreneurialism. And honestly, the museum world has really benefited when any of us have come in and said, hey, let's rethink a little bit about what we do. So we're very serious about art. We don't want to play with that. We're very good at that, and we're very well respected with that. But around that, we've been allowed to rethink what we do. So it starts with our exhibition. We always have 4 or 5 exhibitions. These are big museums. The smallest one is 5,000 square meters. The biggest is 7,000 square meters. So these are big places. We have a lot of space for exhibitions. We usually have 4 or 5 exhibitions at any given time. Our permanent exhibition is not the focus of what we do. We curate our exhibitions directly with different artists. And then there's a mix. There's some very, very big names or very big topics that bring people that typically don't go to museums. Anything like David LaChapelle or Annie Leibovitz or Sarah Moon, or, big topics like 50 years of hip hop, exhibitions like that. And then we mix that up with exhibitions that are drawing from the local community, that reflect local topics. And those hang 3 or 4 months, but every few weeks, one of those exhibitions gets replaced by whatever comes next. So there's always something new on. The other 2 key things that we do very differently is we're open late. We're open till 11 o'clock at night, that's when people have time. And the other thing that we do is you can have a glass of wine anywhere in our museum. And that means we've become this place where people come after work, they come on date nights, they come with friends, they'll be in our bar, they'll come, we do a lot of programming. So what we've come to realize, just to cut to the chase, is we have a lot of people that come back and again, and we tend to attract this very well-educated, sort of younger, more ambitious audience, people who are culturally curious, who would love to travel, but frankly, they have jobs and stuff to do, so they can't just travel as easily. And they make it their third place. That becomes their place where they go. And we've put on a lot of programming, not just talks about art. We obviously do workshops, but we also do DJ nights. We just do talks about how to collect, how to progress in your career, these kinds of things. And we've become a place for other communities to come together. And so out of that, we've built a membership program. And you said that you're a member, and I love that, because we've had a membership program for quite some time, but when we opened Shanghai, a lot of people said, yeah, but you understand, membership in China, that's never going to happen. And it's wonderfully successful. People have embraced us, and within the first year, we have something like 1,300 members. So it's been a joy.
Wow. That's fantastic. I'm very happy that it's also very well received here in Shanghai, where I live. And you said you bought the shares and all of the remaining shares in 2016. So now you described what Fotografiska stands for, but what was and what is your vision when you took over the ownership and the chairmanship of Fotografiska? So where are we heading?
Exactly here. I mean, this has really been a drive for us to have real respect in the art world has made it possible for us to have very different kinds of conversations about how we grow and where we're going. So we have a number of cities that we are in various stages of expanding to and thinking about, okay, this is a fit for us, that makes sense. Not every city in the world works. You know, it has to make sense for who we are and who we understand our audience is. And so we tend to look at the kind of cities that attract that young audience that is focused on culture and the arts and media, and that tends to be the hub for their country, their region, their area where that happens. And, you know, we also like to overlap that with cities where there is an interest in tourism, where people say, I want to go there, I want to spend time there, I want to be there. And so, you know, we look at the typical European capitals and say, okay, what makes sense for us? We look at various American cities. We look at cities all over the world. I mean, this is not to sound pompous, but we have incoming almost every week. Not everybody's ready to, execute on it, and they're interested. This is not easy. We're proud of what we're doing. We like what we're doing, but it takes a unique set of skills to put together to make something like this work.
Now you mentioned how you choose the locations, and here in Shanghai, it's also a massive building, a fantastic location, also with a rooftop, a nice restaurant, a bar, great exhibition space just next to the Suzhou Creek. And in a LinkedIn post, you also once said that China, and with that Shanghai, makes an important contribution to visual language. What exactly fascinated you about Shanghai and China? And so how did you choose that location here?
I'm a big fan of China. I think that Shanghai is the logical first step, because Shanghai has always been the most outward-facing city in China. It's always been the city where there's been the most cultural exchange, and it's reflected now. If you think about where, modern media happens, in that sense, I mean social media, for instance, right? That a lot of that is driven by young Shanghainese. There's obviously other cities. I mean, I find China fascinating because there are these huge cities that people in the West are just learning about. But culturally, it feels like a lot comes out of Shanghai, obviously also out of Beijing and frankly, at this point, Shenzhen. But there is a lot that's happening. By the way, Chengdu also really a lot going on. So, and I could probably rattle off 6 other cities, but I think it's fascinating to have this opportunity to be with a young audience, and young at heart, because honestly, I'm not exactly young, but I feel part of that audience. I think there are people who are just young and they want to experience culture and they want to take their time and their energy up that way. And China's one of those places where that's coming from. And it just feels right now. Is there a separate visual language? Yeah, I think there is. I think there is a comfort in coming outside of well-known tropes and coming away from traditional classes of image making. I mean, with all love and respect to our friends in Japan, things there sometimes feel very academic and very rigid at times. Even in their way that they do things new, it has to be done a certain way in order for it to be officially that. Whereas I think the young Chinese the people who are really the most active in culture tend to mix and match what they see and just reinterpret it in their own way. And I love that. And I want Fotografiska to be part of that dialogue.
Yeah, great. And now looking at China, you mentioned Chengdu. Was that a hint that the next Fotografiska in China will be in Chengdu, or what is your China plans?
No, that's just me manifesting and wishing out loud. We are talking to a number of people in various Chinese cities. We very much plan on expanding inside China. And we're trying to figure that out right now, exactly who the right partners are for that and how we want to do it. It really ultimately comes down to touch and feel. You have to be there. You have to walk into that building and you have to stand there and say, okay, this works. There's so many moving parts to it that no matter how well you write your business plan, no matter how well you articulate what you're hoping to accomplish, so much of what we do relies on the physicality of where we're at. So yeah, it's got to be a great building, but it's got to also be a great building in a place where people can get to after work. It's got to be in a place where people can get to easily, where we can do what we do. People always ask me, how many square meters do you need? I'm like, well, okay, I can tell you how many square meters I need, but what I really need, first of all, is cubic meters. I need ceiling heights. I need a place to really show art. It needs to work as a building the way that we move through the building. Okay, it makes sense to put a bar here. It makes sense to do the main exhibitions there. We have, event spaces, smaller or larger, pending, sometimes we have smaller audiences for the workshops. Sometimes we have these big moments where we have the big artist talks and other events. The space, I sometimes make this joke that our spirit animal is the hermit crab, like we're like a little crab and we go put our butt in it, and if it fits, then we take it. So it's a little bit like that. But, there are certainly cities that we look at in China and say that our audience is definitely there.
Yeah, great. And well, you said you are not government funded, so basically Fotografiska, the locations, they need to be run profitable. What is the business model behind it? Is it a license franchise business, or are you really driving everything yourself?
Up till now, I've driven everything myself. Up till now, I've done everything myself. We are now, we can't grow in the way that we want to grow based on just me doing it. I need financial partners, I need cultural partners, I need linguistic partners, and so expansion now happens through licensing, because there are places that want Fotografiska, but I just can't get there. I don't know how to be. I mean, you want to go back to Chengdu. I can't get there all the time. I don't speak the language and so on. We have a great Chinese team, Christian Devilliers and his team, who run Fotografiska China. The first one is in Shanghai. Yes, they will focus on it, but we look to local partners to do that. And so that will be whether you call it a franchise or a license, or the point is we need local partners to execute on that. We bring the exhibitions, we bring the brand, we bring the membership, we bring the experience around the retail. We know how to build this business. But the partners that we work with understand that they're often, cultural entrepreneurs working together with real estate developers. The real estate developers know that we bring traffic, right? So back in the old days, you might have had people who put in big name stores or movie theaters and so on. None of that really works anymore. You understand e-commerce. People prefer to just take a picture of something and have that thing shipped home. That's not how that works for people who have a lot of real estate. They still want people to come. And so for us to bring that super well-motivated, well-educated audience helps them. But then in return, we need their cooperation in making sure that the building is sensible, that the business relationship is sensible. And that's what we can contribute back.
Great. Yeah, maybe there's someone in the audience who feels engaged by that and wants to open with Fotografiska in China. Then yeah, they should contact you.
They should contact, and if it's China, they should contact Christian Devilliers, who is the managing director of Fotografiska China. He is based out of Shanghai. Remarkably smart person. He's also been in China for over 20 years and knows this landscape extremely well, and deserves a lot of applause and kudos and respect for what he's done in Fotografiska in Shanghai.
Fantastic. I'm sure Kristin will also listen to the podcast, and I
hope so.
I'll
let him know that we have it.
For a glass of wine, hopefully at the bar. Yeah, and you said, and I know that Fotografiska is combining this gastronomy, art, architecture, and events. So how long did it take for the Chinese consumer to really appreciate that? And has it already been fully appreciated? So is that model really already has taken off here in Shanghai?
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I think we hit pretty fast. I think it's certainly taken a moment for people to So there are obviously cultural differences and not just between China and the West, but there's a cultural difference between Stockholm and Berlin and New York and Shanghai. Everybody feels differently when they hear the word museum. Right. And so it's taken a moment for people to understand that our entire museum landscape is rethinking how we interact with people. I think we've all had to come to learn. I mean, we've always done it, but at first people were like, I'm sorry, you guys are doing what? To like, hey, can you help us understand how we can do this? I just got back. I just spent a week in Madrid at a museum conference called Next In, of absolutely the remarkable global leadership of museums. And it was a joy to be there and hear that we're all exactly thinking about the same issues. I mean, I think let's step back for a second. Over the last 5 years, I don't even want to reference the pandemic, it's almost unrelated to that, but certainly over the 5 years, technologically, we now have everything we want at home. For those of us that have a nice place to go, I've got the biggest TV and I can dial up the best movies and the best shows. I can have the best food delivered to me. I can have the best stuff delivered to me. And if I'm in a relationship where I want to find one, I can even find that online. So really, honestly, we've gotten to a point where we need to compete with that technology to get people to get off the couch and come out. And we're seeing that in everything. I mean, for those of you who have read my bio, you know I'm also an original club kid. I come from the nightclub world and I'm still in that universe. And we're seeing it in the nightclubs as well. People are like, oh my God, like, how do we get people to come? Even the numbers there stepping back. I mean, ever since art school, it's been like, oh my God, we're going out at night. And now it feels like it's become less. And so we really need to think about the fact that we're competing for people's free time. So if we're competing for people's free time, we better put on something really compelling and we better be open at hours when people actually have time for us. Because otherwise, a traditional museum, and this is where I think a lot of the Shanghai community was a little bit like, okay, what's a museum? It's the kind of thing I had to go to when I was in school, and it's a bunch of old paintings and maybe some sculptures. I don't know that I want to spend my free time doing that. And so to educate them on that and saying, okay, first of all, the art itself is pretty cool. Second of all, the art is like explained in a way where I can enjoy it and I don't feel spoken down to, and I feel like I get to have an opinion and I get to be part of it. And then there's all this other stuff going on. I can go with a friend and I can have a glass of wine and I can meet afterwards. And that whole overall concept takes a while to communicate. We've been open since October 2023, so it's been a year and a half. And our numbers are going up every month. The restaurant's full, retail's going well, but for people to say, okay, I'm also going to go inside and I'm going to see the art. And then the first time they go in and they come out and they go like, oh my God, that was incredible. That was just a mind blower. And that is word of mouth going out now. So all the influencers in the world can say that, but I think that the other thing that has happened with the new generation is people are so savvy now on social media that they know if an influencer is telling them, they also know that that's an influencer who is excited to have new content. But those credible voices that really get you to get up and go, those are great to find. Let's put it that way. But so yes, so the Shanghai audience is starting to understand what we're doing.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, absolutely lovely location. I mean, the restaurant is called Mona, I think, and the restaurant in Berlin is called Veronica, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So Veronica is the patron saint, die Heilige of photography. You can look that up. I didn't make that up. We didn't want to take the full Veronica concept to Shanghai. We wanted to do something. Look, everything we do is not about us bringing Fotografiska and saying, hey, congratulations, we've brought you a Fotografiska. It's about reflecting back the city in which we are. But at some point, you also have to see that it's so different from the version that we know from New York. So we have Veronica in New York, we have Veronica in Berlin. This concept, that young Mona concept that we have with two 27-year-old female chefs, a pastry chef and a chef de cuisine, who have really been able to rethink fusion of traditional Chinese and Western food in a fun, shareable way. Like we were like, it deserves its own name. And so we felt Mona was fit. It just works.
Perfect. Yeah, that was always a question I wondered. But thank you for answering that. And you said, yeah, there's a restaurant, there's retail, there's a museum. If you can share kind of, let's say, a pie chart, what drives the most revenue and profitability? What keeps the model going?
Well, it's a mix. I mean, I think ultimately people in is people in. So we want to get people to come and see the shows. We want them to come and spend time. We want them to buy a ticket and come in and see the exhibition. We want them to come back for the next exhibition. And by the second, certainly by the third time, they're like, okay, you know what? I love this, but I may as well just become a member because A, then my tickets are built in. And B, I get first dibs on doing all this programming. I get to invite it to the opening parties. I get all this other stuff that's on top of that. So that obviously is a large driver of what we do. That audience, by the way, has also led to commercial underwriters, big brands saying, love this, love your audience. We would love to engage with you on that. So we have big brands that want to work with Fotografiska that say, okay, either we want to create exclusive moments for our members and our customers that we already have. So that in the US, that was, the big credit card companies, they'll underwrite a major exhibition and then say, hey, I want our audience to have our card holders every Thursday. That's just a card member exclusive night and so on. So we're happy to build that out for them. Or people would just say, oh my God, you guys have a really good audience. It would be great if our brand and your brand sort of work together, and then maybe we can, get a little bit more knowledge out about who we are. And so we do a lot of underwriting. That's typical across the art and museum and cultural world at this point. And so we have found that because we attract this incredibly well-educated younger audience, a lot of brands are like, oh my God, those are the people we speak to all the time. So let's continue that conversation at Fotografiska. So that also helps. We have retail. Retail is retail. What we've done, especially in Shanghai and in the other Chinese cities as well, we really have put an emphasis on things you can only get in our shops. And we sometimes see young people who have learned to use the photo app for, product recognition and then want to order it somewhere else. Not necessarily because they want to order it cheaper, but because they would just rather have it sent home and then have it be there when they get there. No, we really sell things you can only get at Fotografiska. And it's always an aha moment for people. It takes curation as well. You can't just put up a bunch of stuff and, hope people find it. It takes a deft touch, again, to understand who your audience is and what you do. Food and beverage is food and beverage. We do that well, and we're proud of that. And so within that overall Venn diagram of ticket sales, membership, food and beverage, our overall partnerships, that's what we do. That's our business.
Great. Love to hear that.
We also selectively, the other thing that we do, the final thing that we do is we do selectively make our space available for brands or other companies to host events.
Okay.
It's got to be on brand. It's got to make sense. They need to understand who we are. But we also do that.
Sure. Okay, it makes sense. The space that you have here is fantastic, phenomenal location, really cool. It brings also a little bit Berlin vibes. Yeah, I mean, I myself, I'm not born in Berlin, but we also have a company there and an office. So I used to live in Berlin a couple of years. You know Berlin very, very well. You're born and raised there. You're also the publisher of Tipp Berlin and The Berliner. So you know the cultural scene inside out. Are there any parallels with Shanghai?
Yes, I am very much a Berliner. And I also spent my formative years sort of from 13 to 20 in New York City. So living in New York from, like 1983 to 1990, right in the middle of the 80s, and then in Berlin has really sort of informed for me how a city works. And there are moments in Shanghai that feel a lot like that. And I mean that in the sense of this young entrepreneurialism where there are people who are like, this is anything is possible. If I put my foot forward and say, this is what I want to create, this is what I want to build, this is the company I want to build, this is the business I want to build, this is the media presence I want to create, I can do that. And I think that is really attractive to me. And those are the kind of people I love spending time with. And I see that in Shanghai. And it reminds me of the 90s in Berlin. It reminds me of the late 90s in LA, in California. There's just this sort of like courage that people have to say, I am going to do something cool. And I am going to take some risks about making the world a more exciting, better place. And I love that. I think where people engage and say, hey, I want to build this brand. I have this idea. I love that. I think that's really entrepreneurial, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to where China is right now.
Happy to hear that from you. And you're very strongly committed to cultural spaces that create the communities, right? So why is community so important to you also from an entrepreneurial perspective?
I just like when people commit to something, right? And these don't have to be, the communities, we can all be members of all kinds of different communities. We find So there's membership and there's community. And I want to take a moment to differentiate between those two. Membership is like, okay, I can become a member. I can become a member of Fotografiska. I can become a member of Soho House. I can become a member of all these places. And the question then is, what do I get, right? So I get discounts. I get free entrance. I get to participate in these things. What do I get? Community is very much about what can I contribute? And there's all kinds of communities. And, one of the communities that I came up through as a lifelong photographer was the photography community, where people are online or they're meeting in places and they go photographing together and they exchange ideas over how do I do this, or here's a project we can do together. There's a creative cultural community that comes up around that, and there's friendships that go beyond that. And to have a physical place for that is great. It becomes this idea of a third place. And I'll get into that in a minute. But there's, other, like in Berlin, we have these incredible runners community. I've seen them in Shanghai as well. People who get together on weekends, in the mornings, after work, and they go for runs together. And yeah, you start with running, but out of that, you have these other conversations. You start meeting people. You find great friends. Maybe you find somebody that you start a life with. So I love this idea of communities and building spaces for that matters, right? Because we have something called this idea of the third place. We have our first place, which is home. We have our second place, which is work. And that's where we spend most of our time. Or at least we did in the old days. Now people are working from home or whatever. But this third place, where else do you go? And to have this third place, and that could be a social club, that can be your sports club, that can be, your town square, that can be just, the commons area out front of your house. But where you go, where you have people that trust you, that know you, that you like back, that matters. And you can have more than one, right? And so I'm proud to have Fotografiska think of itself as a place where other communities can create their third place. They say, hey, we start our runs at Fotografiska in the morning. This business club, this creative club meets here every Thursday afternoon. To have this is a great way to contribute back into a city. And yeah, it's smart business. Ultimately, if you have people constantly coming back to your place, you can build, a business.
Yeah, and well, you said you've been pioneering this membership thing here in China. People have been saying it doesn't work. Now it turns out it works. And you just mentioned Soho House. So now neither of us are directly affiliated with that. But do you think
I'm a member? I'm a founding member of the Soho House in Berlin. I mean, I don't own any part of that business. I just give them money once a year to be a member. But
so do you think that would? I'm also a member in the Soho House Berlin. So, but
right.
do you think this would work in China because it's not yet here, right?
No, I don't think that one would work yet. I don't know. Soho House is very smart about what they do. If they felt it was ready to work, then they would have built that up. I don't know. It's a good question. I think it takes a risk. Look, we did it anyway with Fotografiska. Obviously, Soho House is a substantially more expensive membership than Fotografiska, but I think there's space for it. And the fact that Fotografiska is doing it, and that it works, I hope, gives all these other membership clubs the confidence to come and see what's going on.
That'd be nice. I hope so too. I mean, there is one in Hong Kong also already.
True.
So,
and I believe that's working well, although I think that's a smaller one.
Yeah.
I think that's not that huge a space.
Exactly. It's not as huge as we've seen it in Berlin or other places. Right. So let's see. But then as an investor yourself, an entrepreneur, an artist, investing and art, creativity doesn't always go hand in hand, right? So how do you manage these? Are there sometimes points of friction?
Yeah, I mean, I can't do it all at the same time. I mean, I miss being an artist myself. I don't have the moment to do that right now, and I think it'll be a while until I get that chance again. I am very focused on building these companies, and I'm very proud of what I'm doing there. But yeah, definitely, I miss making art. Are there frictions? Yeah, I mean, there's only look, I mean, I don't know. As an entrepreneur, and I think you know the feeling, and I think any other entrepreneur knows the feeling, you work at maximum all the time. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. If that's the thing you're doing it at maximum. And so if you only have, I don't know, you only have 14 hours a day in which you can work, you do need some sleep. At some point, 14, I don't know, whatever, how many hours you're awake is the amount you're working, right? And you're going to do what you can do. Now, I'm in a wonderful position in which I've been doing this for years, and I've been able to put teams around me of people that are incredibly skilled and know what they're doing. And so I would not be able to do this all alone.
When you look into the future, what role do you think will China play in the global art and cultural world in the next 5 years?
That's a good question. There's different forms in which that's going to take place. I'm not seeing as much Chinese pop music making it out of the country yet as I wish I would. There is a deep understanding of the fine arts coming out of China. I think that is well established and is having its contribution. I am starting to see more. So I think of culture as not just the arts. I also think of it as it manifests in fashion and in other consuming things. And I do see a lot of design and also fashion that's coming across. So I like that. I'm excited about that. We will see. I mean, right now, everybody in the world is very focused on what's happening inside their own country. I like the world best when everybody was looking to see how they could best work together. And I'm hoping we're going to get back to that pretty soon because I think we've all done better for that. So I think that China would do well to. I love, again, like I see design that I really like. I mean, honestly, some of the car design, like forget the physics. I'm not a car guy, so I don't know which car is actually physically better than another car, but I like the way they look. I actually like the design of them. I'm a watch guy. I'm seeing really great watches coming out of China. I think that's fabulous. Companies like Barron's are doing incredible things. I really like what's coming from there as other companies. So I know there is design happening, and that gets me really excited when it comes to China.
Fantastic. Yoram Roth, thank you so much for your time today. It was lovely talking to you, and I hope it wasn't the last time. I hope to see you soon in person for a glass of wine in the Fotografiska bar.
We'll let you know. I'll be there in a few weeks.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.